Marcus Webb was 3 hours into a double shift and had already decided that modern medicine was just an elaborate prank being played on healthcare workers. The universe had a sick sense of humor, and Marcus was the punchline. "Let me get this straight," he said, staring at the man in front of him with the kind of exhausted patience that comes from seeing too much stupidity. "You superglued your hand to a bowling ball because you thought it would improve your grip." "It was a league championship," the man replied defensively. "Right, obviously. Why didn't I think of that?" Marcus grabbed a bottle of acetone. "Hold still, genius. This is going to take a while." This was what happened when Jenny called in sick for the 3rd time this month. Marcus got stuck covering nights at Chicago Memorial, where people apparently checked their common sense at the door along with their insurance cards. He'd already dealt with a teenager who'd tried to pierce his own tongue with a mechanical pencil, a woman who'd gotten her hand stuck in a Pringles can and refused to let them break the can because she wanted to finish the chips first, and now this masterpiece of human decision-making. The ER had a special energy at 2 in the morning. It was equal parts chaos and boredom, where you could go from treating a paper cut to performing CPR in the span of 30 seconds. Marcus had learned to roll with it. 10 years of emergency nursing had taught him that people were creative in ways that medical school never prepared you for. "You know what I love about this job?" Marcus muttered, carefully applying acetone around the glued fingers. "The constant reminder that evolution is a myth." "What was that?" "I said this might sting a little. That's when the light happened. Not like a normal light. Not like someone had turned on the overheads or shined a flashlight. This was the kind of light that made you question whether reality had just filed for bankruptcy. It filled the entire ER, bright enough that Marcus had to close his eyes. And when he opened them again, he was definitely not in Chicago anymore. He was standing on what appeared to be the bridge of a spaceship, and he was still holding the bedpan he'd grabbed before working on Bowling Ball Guy. "Outstanding," Marcus said to the empty air. "I finally snapped. 10 years and I've completely lost it. This is fine. This is totally fine." "Greetings, Commander Webb," a voice announced from everywhere and nowhere. It sounded like someone had taught a supercomputer to be enthusiastic. "I am Valor 7, Primary Tactical Intelligence of the Galactic Defense Fleet. You may call me Val." Marcus looked around the bridge. It was massive, filled with screens showing star charts and what he really hoped were not actual battles happening in real time. "I'm going to take a wild guess here and say you've got the wrong guy." "Negative, Commander. My selection algorithm analyzed 4 billion Earth transmissions across all available frequencies. You have successfully managed countless life-or-death crisis scenarios with severely limited resources, maintaining calm under extreme pressure while coordinating complex multi-system responses. Your tactical efficiency rating is 0.97. You are exactly who we need." "I'm a nurse," Marcus said slowly, "the way you'd explain to a toddler why we don't eat crayons." "Precisely. Your combat record is exemplary." "My combat record is telling people that no, they cannot have more pain medication, and yes, they do need to stop vaping." Val processed this for exactly 2 seconds. "I detect sarcasm. This is common among Earth's elite military commanders. The Krell Empire has initiated aggressive expansion protocols across 6 sectors. 40 systems have fallen. 200 billion sentient beings require protection. The Galactic Council has authorized Earth to provide supreme tactical command. That is you, Commander Webb." Marcus looked at the bedpan in his hand, then at the view screen showing what was definitely a space battle, then back at the bedpan. "So just to be clear, you scanned Earth's transmissions, decided I was a military genius, and yanked me out of the ER during a shift?" "Correct. Your service record indicates exceptional performance." "My service record is medical charts and incident reports about stolen pudding cups." "Pudding cups," Val repeated as if contemplating deep tactical significance. "A resource management challenge. Impressive." This was it. This was the moment that broke Marcus Webb. Not the guy who'd tried to remove his own appendix with a steak knife. Not the woman who'd trained her cat to call 911 and then was surprised when paramedics showed up. This. Getting abducted by an overly confident AI who thought nursing experience qualified him to fight an intergalactic war. "Listen, Val," Marcus said, making his voice as reasonable as possible. I appreciate the confidence, really I do. But there's been a massive, galaxy-sized mistake. I don't know anything about space battles or tactics or any of this. I know how to start IVs and argue with insurance companies. Those are not transferable skills. Error, Val announced cheerfully. Selection algorithm confidence level, 99.97%. You are the commander. Welcome aboard, Commander Webb. The fleet awaits your orders. Marcus Webb, still holding a bedpan, stared at the view screen as alien ships exchanged fire across the cosmos, and realized he was going to need a much stronger dose of coffee than the ER vending machine had ever provided. This was going to be a very long day. The bridge doors opened with a sound that Marcus would describe as aggressively science fiction, and 3 beings entered who all looked equally thrilled to see him, which was to say, not at all. The first was an insectoid creature with 4 arms, compound eyes, and what Marcus could only describe as resting murder face. It wore a uniform covered in enough metals to set off a metal detector from orbit. The second was human, a woman in her 40s with the kind of expression that suggested she'd already had enough of today, and it was only getting started. The third was a translucent blob the size of a large dog that pulsed between colors like a lava lamp having an identity crisis. Commander Webb, Val announced with what Marcus was beginning to recognize as unearned optimism. Meet your senior staff. Lieutenant Crix, Weapons Division, Commander Jenna Torres, Human Liaison Officer, and Pilot Gleep. The blob turned bright orange. Gleep says hello, Val translated. Gleep says what? Torres stepped forward, staring at Marcus like he'd just materialized out of thin air, which, to be fair, he had. Val, what is going on? Why is there a civilian on the bridge, and why is he holding a bedpan? This is Commander Webb, Earth's selected Supreme Tactical Authority. Torres blinked, then blinked again. That's Marcus Webb. I went to school with his sister. He's an ER nurse from Chicago. Correct. His qualifications are exceptional. Crix made a sound like a garbage disposal choking on silverware. This is the legendary Earth Commander? This soft-skinned, single-armed medical technician? I have 2 arms, Marcus pointed out. Pathetic. You know what? I'm starting to like you, Crix. You get it. Tell Val I'm not qualified and we can all move on with our lives. You dare suggest I would assist in your cowardice? Crix's mandibles clicked aggressively. I will accept your incompetence and the inevitable deaths that follow. It will be educational. Educational, Marcus repeated. Great. That's a super healthy attitude. Torres rubbed her temples. Val, run a diagnostic. Your selection algorithm clearly malfunctioned. Negative, Commander Torres. The algorithm functioned perfectly. Commander Webb has managed life and death scenarios involving multiple casualties, resource scarcity, hostile actors, and system-wide failures. His psychological profile indicates exceptional stress tolerance and adaptive problem-solving. That's because I work in an underfunded emergency room, Marcus said. The hostile actors are mostly people who think Tide Pods are food. Gleep turned purple and jiggled. Gleep finds this amusing, Val noted. Of course Gleep does. Torres walked to a console and started typing. Val, I'm overriding this decision. We need to send him back and get an actual military commander. Override rejected. Fleet regulations require 48 hours minimum evaluation period for all tactical commanders. Also, Krell patrol detected on intercept course. Engagement in 4 minutes. The bridge suddenly got very quiet. Marcus felt his stomach drop. I'm sorry, engagement, as in space battle? As in the kind where people die? Affirmative, Commander. Your orders? My orders are that this is insane and someone who knows what they're doing should probably handle this. Insufficient tactical data. Please specify fleet positioning. Torres grabbed his arm. Marcus, listen to me very carefully. Val won't accept anyone else right now. The algorithm locked onto you and that's it for 48 hours. So unless you want those patrol ships to shred us, you need to give orders, any orders. I don't know how to give orders for a space battle. Then give the orders you do know. She pulled up a tactical display. Look, these are our ships, those are theirs, what do you see? Marcus stared at the screen. His brain was screaming at him that this was completely insane, But under the panic, something else was clicking into place. It was the same thing that happened when the ER got 6 critical patients at once, and he had to make snap decisions about who needed attention first. "Okay," he said slowly. "Okay, how many ships do we have?" 12, Crix growled. "Against 5 Krell destroyers. And their weapons, how do they work? Energy, projectiles?" "Plasma torpedoes, moderate range, high damage." Marcus looked at the display again. The pattern was familiar. Overwhelmed, outnumbered, having to prioritize. "All right, we've got what? Smaller ships? Faster ones?" 6 frigates, 4 cruisers, 2 dreadnoughts. "Right. So the smaller ones, the frigates, those are like our triage nurses. They move fast, assess the situation. Send them forward, spread out, make the enemy split their attention. The big ships stay back, they're our specialists. Let the enemy commit to targets, then hit them where they're exposed." Val processed this for precisely 1 second. Outstanding tactical analysis. Implementing diamond formation with forward frigate screen and concentrated dreadnought fire support. This is classified as aggressive defensive posture with resource optimization. "I'm sorry, what?" But Val was already transmitting orders. The view screen showed the fleet reorganizing exactly as Marcus had described, except with way more technical terminology than he'd used. Torres stared at him. "Did you just accidentally create a legitimate battle formation?" "I thought I was describing how we handle mass casualty events." 3 minutes to engagement, Val announced. Crix leaned closer, all 4 arms crossed. "Perhaps you will die with honor after all, nurse." "That's genuinely not reassuring." Gleep turned bright green and bounced enthusiastically. Marcus Webb, still holding a bedpan, watched the Krell patrol ships close in on the display and realized that his day had somehow gotten significantly worse than dealing with bowling ball guy. At least that situation hadn't involved plasma torpedoes. The ships engaged, and despite everything, despite all logic and reason, Marcus's accidental formation worked beautifully. The frigates scattered the Krell formation exactly as he'd described, and the dreadnoughts hit them with concentrated fire that would make a trauma team proud. When the last Krell ship limped away into hyperspace, the bridge was silent. Torres broke it first. "Val, what were our casualties?" 0. Damage to fleet, minimal. Estimated enemy casualties, 60%. Crix made another garbage disposal noise. "Acceptable." "Acceptable?" Marcus slumped against a console. "I just accidentally won a space battle by describing how we handle car accidents on a Saturday night." "Indeed," Val said happily. "Your tactical genius exceeds projections. Excellent work, Commander. This is a nightmare." "This is glory," Crix corrected. Gleep turned bright yellow, which Marcus decided probably meant something, but he was too busy having an existential crisis to care. Commander Torres looked at him with an expression somewhere between horror and respect. "Marcus," she said carefully, "I think we might have a problem." "You think?" "That was just a patrol. The main Krell fleet has 3,000 ships." Marcus Webb closed his eyes and wondered if it was too late to call in sick. News traveled fast in the Galactic Defense Fleet, which meant that within 6 hours every ship knew that Earth's new commander had won his first engagement by applying what he called Saturday night ER protocols. Reactions were mixed. Most species were confused. Several were impressed. The insectoids thought it was hilarious. Marcus had been assigned quarters that were bigger than his apartment back in Chicago, which somehow made everything worse. He sat on a bed designed for species with 3 different skeletal structures and tried to process the fact that he was stuck on a warship for 48 hours minimum, accidentally commanding a fleet he knew nothing about. His door chimed. It was a universal translator thing, but his brain kept hearing it as the ER admission buzzer, which was not helping his stress levels. "Come in," he said, too tired to care who it was. Torres entered with 2 cups of something steaming. "Figured you could use coffee. It's not Earth coffee, but Val assures me it has similar chemical properties. Does it induce hallucinations? Because that might explain today." "Drink it, we need to talk." She sat across from him and handed over a cup. The liquid inside was purple but smelled reasonably coffee adjacent. The Galactic Council is already requesting briefings on your tactical methodology. Marcus took a sip. It tasted like coffee had a fight with licorice, and both lost. I don't have a tactical methodology. I have nursing experience and crippling anxiety. Well, your nursing experience just outperformed 300 years of established fleet doctrine. Torres pulled up a datapad. Val analyzed your commands. You're not thinking about space combat the way we're trained to. You're treating the fleet like a medical system. Because that's what I know. You asked me what I saw, and I saw the same thing I see when 6 ambulances show up at once. You assess, prioritize, allocate resources where they'll do the most good. Exactly. And it works. Torres leaned forward. Look, I've been fleet liaison for 7 years. I've worked with military commanders from 12 different species. They all think in terms of formations, firepower, territorial control. You're thinking in terms of systems management and resource efficiency. That's because I'm not a commander. I'm a guy who keeps people alive with whatever supplies haven't been back-ordered by hospital administration. Right. And Fleet Command is just keeping ships alive with whatever resources we have available. She smiled. You're doing the same job, Marcus, just bigger scale. Before Marcus could explain all the ways that was absolutely insane, his communicator chirped. Val's voice filled the room. Commander Webb, priority alert. Krell strike force detected in Sector 7. 4 colonies under threat. Admiral Kresh requests immediate tactical consultation. Marcus looked at Torres. Can't Admiral Kresh handle this? Admiral Kresh has handled 40 engagements using standard doctrine. He's lost 19 of them. You're 1 for 1. That was luck. Then let's see if you can get lucky again. Torres stood up. Come on. Val won't accept anyone else's commands anyway. The bridge was more crowded this time. Multiple view screens showed different angles of the developing situation. Admiral Kresh, who appeared to be a vaguely reptilian being with too many teeth, glared at Marcus from a communication channel. You are the Earth Commander? Kresh's voice sounded like rocks in a blender. Against my will, yes. The Krell are attacking 4 colonies simultaneously. Standard protocol suggests splitting our forces to protect all locations. Marcus looked at the tactical display. 4 colonies spread across a sector, with a Krell force that was definitely big enough to overwhelm divided defenses. It was the same problem as a mass casualty incident. Not enough resources for everyone, too many people needing help at once. No, Marcus said. We don't split up. You would abandon 3 colonies? Kresh's teeth looked even more threatening when he was angry. I would triage them. Marcus pointed at the display. That colony, the one furthest out, what's its population? Val answered instantly. Colony Outpost Gamma 7, population 40,000, primary industry mining. And the other 3? Colony New Harmony 2 million. Colony Breakwater 800,000, Colony Longshot 5 million. Right. So in the ER, when I've got more patients than beds, I don't try to treat everyone equally. I treat the ones who need it most and the ones I can actually save. Marcus traced a path on the display. Outpost Gamma 7 is furthest out, smallest population, and based on this positioning, the Krell will hit it first. We can't get there in time, and even if we could, we'd be leaving the larger colonies exposed. You would sacrifice 40,000 lives? Kresh sounded outraged. I would save 7.8 million lives instead of losing all of them trying to save everyone. Marcus felt his stomach twist, but he'd made these calls before, just never for entire planets. We position here, between the 3 larger colonies, form a defensive perimeter, force the Krell to come through us if they want the other targets. That is retreat, Kresh spat. That's strategic positioning. Look, if the Krell are hitting 4 places at once, they're spreading their forces thin too. Let them take the first colony. They'll consolidate there, claim victory, maybe even slow down to occupy it. That gives us time to fortify the real defensive position. Torres was watching him with an unreadable expression. You're treating Outpost Gamma 7 as an acceptable loss. I'm treating it as the patient who was already critical when they arrived. In triage, you have immediate, delayed, and expectant categories. Expectant means their chances are minimal, and resources used on them could save multiple others. Marcus hated saying it, hated thinking it, but the numbers didn't lie. It's not about who deserves to be saved. It's about who can be saved with what we have. Val processed for 3 full seconds. Tactical analysis complete. Commander Webb's strategy optimizes survival probability across all colonies. Implementation recommended. Cricks appeared on another screen, all 4 arms visible. The nurse speaks wisdom. Sometimes you must let one limb die to save the body. That's disturbingly close to medical advice, Marcus muttered. Then it is decided, Val announced. Fleet will establish defensive perimeter between New Harmony, Breakwater, and Longshot, abandoning Outpost Gamma 7 to enemy forces. Not abandoning, Marcus corrected quietly. Triaging. The fleet moved according to his orders, forming what Val called a layered defensive matrix with concentrated force multipliers. Marcus called it putting the specialists where they're needed most and hoping for the best. Outpost Gamma 7 fell within 3 hours. The Krell didn't even stop to occupy it, just destroyed the main facilities and kept moving. 40,000 lives reduced to a casualty statistic. Marcus watched it happen on the view screen and felt exactly the way he did every time he lost a patient in the ER. Like he should have done something more, something different, even when he knew rationally there was nothing else to be done. "Commander?" Val said softly, as much as an AI could say anything softly. "You saved 7.8 million lives today. Doesn't feel like winning." "No," Torres agreed from beside him. "It never does." But when the Krell fleet hit the defensive perimeter, they hit a unified force instead of scattered defenses. Marcus's positioning meant the fleet could rotate ships in and out of combat, treating damaged vessels like patients in recovery and cycling them back to support positions. He called it managing bed flow. Val called it revolutionary resource cycling with dynamic engagement patterns. The Krell retreated after losing a third of their strike force. The 3 remaining colonies survived without significant casualties. Admiral Kresh sent a formal communication that night. "Earth Commander, your tactics are dishonorable but effective. The Council recognizes your contribution." "Dishonorable but effective," Marcus repeated to Torres over more terrible purple coffee. "That's going on my nursing resume. You understand what this means, right?" Torres was serious now. "The Council is going to want you to stay on. Val's algorithm locked onto you for a reason. You actually are good at this. I'm good at making impossible choices and living with the consequences. That's not a qualification, that's a trauma response." Gleep oozed into the room and turned a sympathetic shade of blue. "Gleep says you carry the weight well," Val translated. "Tell Gleep that's the saddest compliment I've ever received." But that night, as Marcus lay in his impossible bed on an impossible ship in the middle of impossible space, he couldn't help thinking about the numbers. 7.8 million lives saved, 40,000 lost. In the ER, he'd learned that you couldn't save everyone, but you could save someone. And sometimes someone was enough. He just wished it felt more like enough right now. The sanctuary system was not supposed to fall. It couldn't fall. 40 billion refugees from 12 different species had gathered there after their homeworlds were conquered by the Krell Empire. It was the single largest humanitarian crisis in galactic history, which Marcus knew, because Val had cheerfully informed him of this while showing casualty projections that made his ER trauma statistics look like a quiet Tuesday. "Explain this to me again," Marcus said, staring at the tactical display that showed roughly 5,000 Krell warships approaching the system. "Because it looks like we're about to get absolutely destroyed." "Accurate assessment," Crick said from the weapons station. The insectoid had warmed up to Marcus, which apparently meant he was now brutally honest instead of just brutal. "We have 800 ships. They have 5,000. Mathematics is not favorable." "Val, why didn't we see this coming?" The Krell concealed their fleet using a nebula barrier. By the time sensors detected them, engagement became inevitable. Grand Admiral Thorax is commanding personally. Intelligence suggests he has been studying your tactical patterns, Commander. My tactical patterns are just nursing with extra steps. What's there to study? Torres looked up from her console. Marcus, Thorax is their best commander. He's won every major engagement in this war. And apparently you fascinated him. He's been requesting all available data on Earth's military doctrine. Earth's military doctrine didn't prepare me for this. Earth's military doctrine doesn't know I exist. Marcus felt the familiar pressure building in his chest. The same feeling when the ER got 6 codes at once and he was the only senior nurse on the floor. Val, what's our realistic survival probability? At current force ratios, 14%. 14, great. Those are really encouraging numbers. I have fought with worse odds, Crix offered. How'd that work out? I lost 3 limbs. Super. That's super helpful, Crix, thank you. Gleep turned gray, which Marcus had learned meant concern. Even the perpetually cheerful Blob knew they were in trouble. The fleet moved into defensive positions around Sanctuary's inhabited planets. 40 billion beings down there, most of them already traumatized from losing their homes once. Marcus thought about the ER when gang violence got bad, when they'd get waves of gunshot victims, and every bed was full and people were dying faster than he could help them. He'd hated it then. He hated this more. Val, Marcus said slowly, I need you to do something for me. I need you to run a diagnostic on your selection algorithm. For what purpose, Commander? Because I think you made a mistake. I think you grabbed the wrong person, and 40 billion lives are about to pay for it. Torres stepped closer. Marcus, this isn't the time. No, it's exactly the time. Val, I'm an ER nurse. I manage trauma and emergencies with limited resources. That's it. I'm not a fleet commander. I don't know advanced tactics or strategic theory or whatever military school teaches people. I just know how to keep people alive long enough for someone smarter to fix the actual problem. Val was quiet for 5 full seconds, which in AI terms was basically an eternity. Commander Webb, my algorithm. Your algorithm analyzed my nursing career and thought it was military experience. We both know that. I've been faking this for 3 days, and now we're facing an actual military genius who's going to tear us apart because I don't know what I'm doing. Commander Webb, Val said, and for the first time the AI sounded uncertain. I require time to process this information. You don't have time, Marcus pointed at the view screen where the Krell fleet was closing in. They're going to be here in 90 minutes and we need someone who actually knows how to win this fight. Val's systems made a sound that Marcus would later describe as a computer having a panic attack. Lights flickered across the bridge. Half the displays went dark. Val? Torres rushed to a console. Val, respond. What did I do? Marcus felt his stomach drop. You just gave an AI an existential crisis during combat operations. Torres was typing frantically. Val's entire purpose is tactical analysis. You just suggested its core function failed. It's trying to reconcile contradictory data and… Oh no. Oh no what? Val just crashed. Full system reboot required. Estimated time, 40 minutes. Crick stood up, all forearms reaching for weapons controls. Then I assume command. All ships, standard battle formation Delta 7. Prepare for glorious honorable combat and probable death. Marcus watched the fleet reorganize into what he could only assume was a traditional military formation. It looked impressive. It also looked like it was designed to get them killed efficiently. The Krell fleet closed in. 30 minutes until engagement. 25. 20. Torres was sweating, still trying to get Val back online. Crix was coordinating the fleet with the kind of calm efficiency that came from expecting to die. Gleep had turned black, which couldn't be good. Marcus watched the tactical display and felt that familiar pressure building. The one that happened when everything was falling apart and people were dying, and you were the only one who could do anything about it. He'd felt it hundreds of times in the ER. Every mass casualty, every code that went bad, every impossible situation where the only choice was to do something or watch everyone die. Crix, Marcus said quietly. What is it, nurse? I am busy preparing our final stand. How many ships have we lost so far using your formation? 17. Acceptable losses for the opening engagement. 17 ships? That's what, 3,000 crew members? Approximately. Why do you ask? Why do… Marcus looked at the display again. At the defensive formation that was losing steadily. At the Krell fleet that was pressing the advantage. at 40 billion people who were about to become casualties because he wasn't good enough to save them. And then he thought about the ER, about triage, about managing mass casualties with whatever you had available, about the fact that whether it was one patient or one planet, the principle was the same. Assess, prioritize, treat. He wasn't a commander. Val had been wrong about that. But Val had also been right about something else. He knew how to manage crisis situations with limited resources. He knew how to keep people alive when everything was falling apart. Maybe that was enough. Torres, Marcus said, his voice suddenly steady. Can you transmit fleet-wide without Val? Yes, but Marcus, you don't have authority. I don't care about authority. Those ships are dying because I had a meltdown. I'm fixing it. He grabbed the communicator. All ships, this is Commander Webb. I know I don't sound like a commander. I know most of you think I'm a fraud. You're right. I'm an ER nurse who got grabbed by mistake. Crix turned to stare at him. What are you doing? Being honest for once. Marcus looked at the display. I don't know fleet tactics. I don't know military strategy. But I know how to handle mass casualty events, and that's what this is. So here's what we're going to do. He started giving orders, not military orders, medical orders, triage protocols translated into fleet movements, resource management adapted for space combat. Every trick he'd learned from 10 years of keeping people alive in impossible situations. Damaged ships fall back immediately. I don't care if they can still fight. Golden hour rule. If they're hit, they get stabilized before they return to combat. Frigates spread out and call out enemy positions. You're my triage nurses. Dreadnoughts focus fire only on targets that frigates identify as critical threats. We don't waste resources on minor injuries. Torres stared at him. You're treating the battle like an ER. It's what I know. Marcus kept going. And Sanctuary's defense stations, those are our specialists. They stay protected in the back. We don't risk them unless absolutely necessary. Everyone else rotates through combat. 30 minutes engaged, 30 minutes recovery. Nobody stays in the fight until they break. The fleet started reorganizing. It wasn't a military formation. It was barely organized chaos. But it was organized chaos that Marcus understood. The Krell hit them like a hammer. But instead of meeting them head-on, Marcus's formation bent, shifted, rotated. Damaged ships fell back before they became casualties. Fresh ships cycled in. The defense stations stayed protected, providing concentrated fire support exactly where the frigates identified weak points. It shouldn't have worked. It violated every principle of space combat doctrine. It worked anyway. 15 minutes into the engagement, Torres pulled up casualty reports. Marcus, we've only lost 3 ships. Crix's formation lost 17 in the same time frame. Because I'm not trying to win gloriously. I'm trying to keep everyone alive long enough to survive. Crix made his garbage disposal sound, but quieter. The nurse has wisdom. The Krell fleet kept pushing, kept pressing, but Marcus's formation held. Barely. Ships cycled in and out of combat. Damage reports became triage decisions. Resource allocation became the difference between life and death. Val's systems came back online with a sound like a computer clearing its throat. Commander Webb, I have completed my analysis. Kind of busy, Val. I understand. However, I have determined that my selection algorithm did not malfunction. You are not a military commander. You are a crisis management specialist who applies medical system theory to impossible situations. That is precisely why we needed you. Marcus ducked as the ship shook from a near miss. Great. We'll workshop that realization later. Right now, help me figure out how to not die. Acknowledged, Commander. Synchronizing with your current tactical pattern. I believe you call it organized chaos. That's the technical term, yes. Together, Marcus and Val kept the fleet alive. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't glorious. It was desperate and messy and barely controlled. But it was working, and in the ER, sometimes barely working was good enough. The main Krell fleet was still coming, though, and Grand Admiral Thorax was about to make his move. Marcus took a breath and prepared for the code blue of his life. Val's reboot had brought clarity, which was unfortunate because the clarity was that they were still absolutely going to lose this fight unless something changed dramatically. Grand Admiral Thorax's main fleet was moving into position with the kind of precision that came from actually knowing what you were doing, which put him significantly ahead of Marcus in the competence department. "Commander Webb," Val said, and Marcus noticed the AI's tone had shifted. Less cheerfully optimistic, more professionally collaborative. "I have analyzed the pattern of our engagement. You are maintaining fleet cohesion at 78% efficiency despite overwhelming force disadvantage. That's a fancy way of saying we're losing slowly instead of quickly." "Correct. However, I now understand why my algorithm selected you. You do not think in terms of winning battles. You think in terms of preventing system collapse." Torres looked up from her console, where she'd been coordinating damaged ship rotations. "Val, what are you saying?" "I am saying that Commander Webb is exactly who we need, but we have been misunderstanding his role. He is not here to defeat the Krell. He is here to keep us alive, while we find a way to defeat the Krell." Marcus watched Thorax's fleet maneuvering on the display. The formation was textbook perfect, the kind of thing that came from centuries of military doctrine and actual training. "Val, I appreciate the vote of confidence, but keeping us alive only works if there's eventually a victory condition. Right now, I'm just buying time before we lose." "Then perhaps," Val said carefully, "we need to redefine what victory means." Crix clicked his mandibles, and what Marcus had learned was thoughtful agreement. "In warrior culture, we have a saying. When you cannot defeat the enemy, make the enemy defeat themselves." "That's great philosophy, but how does that help us against 5,000 warships?" "Because," Val said, pulling up new data on the displays, "Grand Admiral Thorax has been studying your tactics, trying to understand Earth's military doctrine. He believes you are implementing an advanced strategy that he has not encountered before." Marcus stared at Val. "I'm not. We've covered this. I'm just doing nursing." "Precisely. But Thorax does not know that. He believes you are a brilliant military mind implementing revolutionary tactics. He has been analyzing every decision you make, trying to find the pattern, understand the strategy." Val highlighted Thorax's fleet movements. "Notice how he is responding cautiously, setting up counters to tactics you are not actually using." Torres started to smile. "He's overthinking it." "Exactly. He is treating this as a complex military puzzle when it is actually medical crisis management." Val paused. "Commander, I formally request that you remain as tactical commander for this engagement. Not because you are military, but because you are not." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. The same thing that happened in the ER when he stopped fighting the chaos and just accepted it. When he stopped trying to be something he wasn't and just did what he knew how to do. "All right," he said quietly. "But we do this my way. No heroic last stands, no glorious sacrifices. We treat this like a mass casualty incident with the worst possible odds, and we focus on one goal, keeping the patients alive." "The patients being 40 billion refugees," Torres said. "The patients being everyone. Refugees, fleet crews, even the Krell if we can manage it." Marcus looked at the tactical display with fresh eyes. "Not as a battle, but as a medical crisis. Val, what do we know about Krell fleet doctrine?" "They prioritize overwhelming force and territorial control. Standard engagement protocol involves surrounding enemy positions and applying concentrated fire until surrender or destruction. So they're aggressive. They commit fully." Marcus traced patterns on the display. "In the ER, we have a term for infections that spread too fast. They overextend, burn through resources, and eventually collapse if you can contain them long enough." Crix leaned forward. "You wish to treat the Krell fleet as a disease? I want to treat them as a system that can be managed. Look, when someone comes into the ER with sepsis, you don't fight the infection directly. You support the body's systems, manage the symptoms, and wait for the antibiotics to work. The infection defeats itself by overextending." "Fascinating," Val said. "Please elaborate." Marcus pointed at Sanctuary's outer planets. "These are our first line of defense, right? Our triage point. We don't try to hold them. We make Thorax take them, Make him commit ships to occupation and control. Every ship he dedicates to holding territory is a ship that's not fighting us. Torres was nodding. We pull back to the inner system. Make him overextend his supply lines. Exactly. And while he's spreading out, we do what I do in the ER during flu season. We isolate, we contain, we wait for the system to stabilize. Marcus felt the plan forming, the same way treatment plans formed when he was 3 patients deep and running on instinct. Val, can our ships handle hit-and-run attacks? Affirmative. Frigate-class vessels excel at rapid engagement and withdrawal. Good. So here's the prescription. We treat Thorax's fleet like an infection spreading through a body. The outer planets are infected tissue. We abandon them. Let him take them. Let him think he's winning. Meanwhile, our frigates are the immune response. They hit his supply lines, his reinforcement routes, any ship that separates from the main fleet. Guerrilla tactics, Torres said, but on a massive scale. I call it infection control protocols, but sure, Marcus pulled up resource data. The Krell have to maintain supply lines across the territory they occupy. The more territory, the more vulnerable those lines become. We don't fight his strength, we exploit his success. Val processed for exactly 1 second. Commander, this strategy requires abandoning 4 planets to Krell occupation temporarily. I know. I hate it. But in triage, you sometimes have to abandon stable patients to focus on critical ones. Those 4 planets are fortified. They can survive occupation for a while. The inner system, where the refugees are concentrated, that's critical. That's where we hold the line. Crix made a sound that might have been approval. You sacrifice ground to buy time. I sacrifice battles to win the war. Or at least not lose it catastrophically. Marcus looked at his senior staff. This is going to look like retreat. It's going to look like failure. And Thorax is going to think he's winning right up until he realizes he's overextended and we're bleeding him from 1,000 directions. There is a significant risk, Val noted. If the strategy fails, we will have abandoned defensible positions. Every strategy in the ER is risky. You make the best call you can with the information you have and you live with the consequences. Marcus took a breath. I'm asking you to trust me. Not because I'm a military genius, not because I have some master plan, but because I know how to manage disasters, and this is the biggest disaster I've ever seen. Torres stood up. I'm in. Someone needs to keep you from getting us all killed accidentally. I live for glorious chaos, Crix announced. The nurse commander has my forearms. Gleep turned bright green and bounced enthusiastically. Gleep says this is the stupidest plan they've ever heard and they love it, Val translated. That's concerning, but I'll take it. Marcus activated fleet-wide communications. All ships, this is Commander Webb. We're about to do something that's going to look insane. We're abandoning the outer planets. The communication channels erupted in confusion and protest. Marcus waited for them to quiet down. I know how this looks, but here's the truth. I'm not a military commander. I'm an ER nurse, and I'm treating this battle like a medical emergency. Grand Admiral Thorax has 5,000 ships, we have 800. We cannot win a direct fight, so we're not going to have one. He pulled up the tactical plan on shared displays. We're going to let Thorax take the outer planets. Let him spread his forces thin, trying to control territory. Meanwhile, we pull back to the inner system and fortify. Our frigates will run constant hit-and-run attacks on his supply lines. Every ship he dedicates to protection is a ship not fighting us. Every resource he spends on occupation is a resource he can't use on offense. Marcus paused. This is going to take time. It's going to be ugly. People are going to call it retreat. But in the ER, I learned that sometimes the best treatment is buying time for the body to heal itself. We're buying time for Thorax to defeat himself. Admiral Kresh appeared on screen looking skeptical. And if he does not overextend? If he maintains discipline? Then we're in the same position we're in now, except we've evacuated civilians from the outer planets and consolidated our defenses. Either way, we improve our odds. Marcus met Kresh's eyes. I can't promise victory. I can promise I'll do everything possible to keep people alive. That's all I've got. Kresh was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Very well, Earth Commander. We will trust your medical wisdom. May it prove sufficient. The fleet began its organized retreat. Marcus coordinated evacuation of the outer planets while Thorax's forces advanced. It was controlled chaos, the same as managing 6 ambulances arriving simultaneously, and Marcus fell into the rhythm of it. Call out priorities, allocate resources, keep everyone moving, don't think about the big picture, just handle the next immediate crisis. 4 planets fell to Krell control within 6 hours. Thorax's fleet spread across the system, establishing occupation forces, securing supply routes, exactly as Marcus had predicted. And then the frigates went to work. They hit supply convoys. They ambushed reinforcement groups. They struck at communication relays and resource depots, never staying long enough to get caught, always moving, always causing damage. Thorax tried to respond, but every ship he sent to protect his supply lines was a ship pulled from the main fleet. Every resource dedicated to securing conquered territory was a resource not available for pushing forward. 3 days into the engagement, Val pulled up casualty reports. Commander, we have lost 42 ships. The Krell have lost over 400, primarily to frigate attacks on overextended positions. Torres whistled. He's bleeding himself dry trying to hold what he's taken. It's working, Marcus said, almost surprised. The infection control protocol is actually working. Crix appeared on screen from his dreadnought. The Krell Grand Admiral is requesting communication with you, Commander. With me? Why? Probably because you just made him look like an idiot, Torres said with a grin. Marcus accepted the communication. Grand Admiral Thorax appeared on screen. He was a massive crystalline being, all sharp angles and cold calculation. When he spoke, his voice resonated like breaking glass. Commander Webb of Earth, I have studied your tactics extensively. I believed I understood your strategy. I was incorrect. Yeah, that's because I don't have a strategy. I have nursing experience and anxiety. You have something more dangerous than strategy. You have perspective that does not match established doctrine. You do not fight to win, you fight to not lose. It is infuriating. Marcus couldn't help it. He laughed. Welcome to my entire career. That's just what healthcare feels like. Thorax's crystalline structure shifted in what might have been confusion. I came to conquer this system. Instead, I have conquered 4 worthless planets and lost 500 ships trying to hold them. You have turned my victory into a logistical nightmare. That's actually the nicest thing anyone said about my work in years. Strengths into weaknesses by simply refusing to fight the battle I prepared for. Thorax was quiet for a moment. I am forced to admit something I have never admitted before. I cannot defeat you, because you are not playing the same game. I'm not playing a game at all, I'm just trying to keep people alive. Yes, I see that now. Thorax's image shifted. I am withdrawing my forces from this system. The Krell Empire will mark Sanctuary as diplomatically complex and militarily inefficient. We will not return. Marcus blinked. Wait, you're just leaving? I am a military commander, not a fool. I can conquer planets. I cannot conquer your particular brand of organized chaos, and I am unwilling to lose more ships trying. Thorax leaned closer to the screen. You are the strangest opponent I have ever faced, Commander Webb. I hope we never meet again. You are exhausting. The communication ended. The bridge was silent for exactly 5 seconds before everyone started talking at once. Torres was laughing. Crix was making sounds that might have been approval or might have been mechanical failure. Gleep cycled through every color in rapid succession. Val's voice cut through the chaos. Commander Webb, Sanctuary system is secure. Casualty count, 42 ships, approximately 6,000 crew. Civilian casualties, minimal. The Krell Empire is withdrawing all forces. Marcus slumped into the command chair and put his head in his hands. I accidentally won a war by applying infection control protocols. You saved 40 billion lives, Torres corrected. I made a crystalline alien so frustrated he gave up. Sometimes, Crick said with what Marcus recognized as respect. That is the highest form of victory. Marcus looked at the view screen, at Sanctuary's planet still intact, at the fleet that had somehow survived against impossible odds, and felt the same thing he felt after every successful code in the ER. relief, exhaustion, and the nagging certainty that he'd gotten lucky more than he'd gotten good. But lucky was enough. 40 billion people were alive. The fleet was intact. And somewhere in the galaxy, Grand Admiral Thorax was probably filing a very confused after-action report. Marcus Webb, ER nurse, had accidentally won the biggest battle of the Galactic War by treating it like a really complicated Saturday night shift. He couldn't decide if that was inspiring or terrifying. Probably both. The Galactic Council chambers were unnecessarily impressive, which Marcus decided was probably the point. Vaulted ceilings that disappeared into artificially generated nebulae, seats arranged in concentric circles for representatives from 200 species, and a lighting system that made everyone look either heroic or ominous, depending on where they stood. Marcus stood in the center circle and mostly just looked tired. Commander Webb, the council speaker announced, a floating jellyfish entity that pulsed with bioluminescence. On behalf of the Galactic Council, we extend our deepest gratitude for your service. The sanctuary system stands because of your tactical brilliance. I appreciate that, but tactical brilliance is a really generous interpretation of what happened. You defeated Grand Admiral Thorax without a single major fleet engagement. You protected 40 billion lives while sustaining minimal casualties. You revolutionized combat doctrine across the galaxy. The speaker pulsed brighter. We wish to offer you permanent commission as Supreme Fleet Commander. The chamber filled with approving sounds from 200 different species, which created a cacophony that reminded Marcus of the ER waiting room at peak flu season. That's incredibly flattering, Marcus said carefully, but I'm going to have to decline. The chamber went silent. You decline? The speaker's bioluminescence flickered with confusion. But you are the most successful commander in modern galactic history. I'm an ER nurse who got really lucky with pattern recognition. Look, I appreciate everything, but I have patients back on Earth who actually need me. People who think superglue solves grip problems. People who get their hands stuck in Pringles cans. These are critical cases that require my specific expertise. Torres, standing at the edge of the circle, was trying very hard not to laugh. Commander Webb, another council member spoke up, a reptilian being covered in ceremonial jewelry. You saved 40 billion lives. Surely that is more important than individual medical cases. Here's the thing about medicine, Marcus said. Every patient is 40 billion lives to someone. The guy with his hand stuck to a bowling ball has people who love him. The teenager who pierced his own tongue has a mom who's worried sick. Scale doesn't change the fundamental job, which is showing up and helping people who need it. Val's voice came through the chamber speakers. If I may address the council, Commander Webb is correct in his assessment. He is not a military commander. He is a crisis management specialist whose expertise happens to translate to fleet operations. However, his primary function and training are medical, and removing him from that role would be suboptimal resource allocation. Thank you, Val. I think. You are welcome, Commander. I have learned much about proper role assessment from our time together. The speaker pulsed thoughtfully. If you will not accept permanent commission, will you at least accept our highest honors? I'd rather you give those to the people who actually did the fighting. The frigate pilots who ran those supply line raids. The crews who held the inter-system defensive positions. Commander Torres who kept me from accidentally killing everyone through sheer incompetence. Marcus gestured around the chamber. I just made triage calls. They're the ones who made it work. Crick stood up from his seat, all four arms raised. The human refuses glory. This is the most warrior-like behavior I have witnessed. I propose we grant him the honors of humble service. That's a thing? Marcus asked. I just invented it, Crick said proudly. It seems appropriate. The council debated for 20 minutes before agreeing on a compromise. Marcus would receive medals he'd never wear, commendations he'd probably lose, and official recognition that he'd politely ignore. In exchange, he got to go home. Torres was promoted to Supreme Fleet Commander, which she accepted with the kind of weary professionalism that suggested she knew exactly what she was getting into. Val would remain as her tactical AI partner, now with a better understanding of when military doctrine applied and when you just needed to think about medical crisis management. I will miss our collaboration, Commander Webb, Val said as Marcus prepared to return to Earth. You taught me that sometimes the best solution is not the optimal one, but the one that keeps everyone alive long enough to find a better answer. That's just healthcare in a nutshell, Val. Glad I could help. Crix presented Marcus with a ceremonial blade, which was apparently a high honor among insectoid warriors. You fight like a healer who refuses to let patients die. This is respectable. If you ever return to the stars, I will fight beside you again. That's genuinely touching, Crix. Try not to lose any more limbs. I make no promises. Gleep oozed forward and turned a deep purple, cycling through shades that Val translated as affection, gratitude, and amusement. Gleep says you are the weirdest commander they've ever met, and they mean that as the highest compliment. Tell Gleep they're the weirdest pilot I've ever met, and I mean that literally because they're the only sentient blob I've encountered. Gleep turned bright yellow and jiggled happily. Torres walked Marcus to the teleportation bay where Val had assured him he'd be returned to Earth at the exact moment he'd left. Something about temporal compensation and spatial anchoring that Marcus had stopped listening to halfway through. You're sure about this? Torres asked. You could stay. We could actually use someone who thinks like you do. You don't need me. You've got Val, and now Val understands that sometimes the answer isn't in the tactical database. You'll do great. Marcus smiled. Besides, Chicago Memorial ER is probably in complete chaos without me. Someone needs to handle the bowling ball emergencies. The galaxy owes you a debt it can never repay. The galaxy can start by maybe not abducting nurses during their shifts. That would be great. Torres laughed and hugged him. Take care of yourself, Marcus Webb, and if you ever change your mind, the fleet will be here. I'll keep that in mind, right after I deal with the next person who tries to remove their own appendix with kitchen utensils. The teleportation activated with the same blinding light as before. Marcus felt the familiar sensation of reality folding in on itself, and then he was standing in Chicago Memorial ER, still holding the bedpan he'd grabbed before everything went sideways. Bowling ball guy was exactly where Marcus had left him, hand still firmly attached to the ball, looking confused. Did you just disappear for a second? The man asked. Nope. Just been standing here thinking about my life choices. Marcus grabbed the acetone and got back to work. Let's get you unstuck, and then we're going to have a serious conversation about decision-making skills. You're a weird nurse, man. You have no idea. The shift continued exactly as it had before. More ridiculous injuries, more impossible situations, more people making terrible choices and expecting the ER to fix them. Marcus handled it all with the same sarcastic efficiency he'd always had, except now he had a slightly different perspective on impossible situations. Saving one patient or saving 40 billion, the principle was the same. Show up, do the work, keep people alive. Don't give up. Around 4 a.m, during a brief lull between crises, Marcus's co-worker Jenny finally showed up. Sorry I'm late, she said, not looking sorry at all. Traffic was crazy. Jenny, you called in sick 5 hours ago. Did I? Must have been the fever talking. She grabbed a chart. Anything exciting happen while I was gone? Marcus thought about alien fleets and space battles and accidentally winning a war by applying nursing theory to galactic combat. He thought about Val and Crix and Gleep and Torres. He thought about 40 billion lives saved because an AI made a mistake and grabbed the wrong person. Nah, he said finally. Just another Tuesday. Guy superglued his hand to a bowling ball. Classic. You handle it okay? Yeah, Marcus said, smiling slightly. I handled it. His pager went off. Multiple incoming trauma cases from a highway accident. Marcus grabbed his supplies and headed for the ambulance bay, ready to do what he did best. Manage chaos, keep people alive, and maybe, occasionally, save the world. One patient at a time or 40 billion, whatever the shift required.